The Global Troop Resource, trying to put 1,000 skills into every troop's backpack. So, welcome everyone to the Global Troop Resource Show. Tonight I'm here with my co-host Steve Perrone and very special guest Stephanie Marcinkowski. And Stephanie holds many titles. She is a Troop 98 committee member, a Cooking Merit Badge counselor, Roosevelt District member at large, and many, many more. And we're delighted to have her tonight. We're going to be talking about the Cooking Merit Badge and a number of things that entails and some of its history. And we'll get right into that right after this.
Dinner! Hi, I'm Coach Scott, here to remind you to send in your one-pot camping meal recipes you considered for our one-pot camp cooking show and recipe book. These are meals that are easy and delicious and only require one pot to clean. Or maybe they cook in an aluminum foil packet and don't require any pot to clean. Submit your entry now, and if it meets our guidelines, we'll put your name in the one-pot cookbook. Submit 2 recipes, and we'll send you and your troop an electronic copy when it's finished. Be sure to get your parents and whole troop involved. This cookbook might be perfect for your second class, first class, and maybe even Eagle rank requirements.
Send your submissions to info@easywilderness.com. That's info@easywilderness.com. See you around the campfire. Okay, we are back with Steve Perrone and Stephanie Marcinkowski talking about the Cooking Merit Badge. So, Stephanie, talk to me. First, you've got more titles. I think you've got more titles than Steve does. So, tell me a little bit about your background and how you got involved with this.
Well, I kind of got involved because of food. I found it very frustrating that I couldn't find any resources within the BSA program altogether. Nothing. I looked through Cooking Merit Badge and I was constantly grabbing everything. I was looking online, First Aid Merit Badge, anything I could find, and there was nothing in there that really educated people on how to help those in the program that had any kind of food allergies. So that's how I got involved in the program. And I found out very soon after I started getting frustrated. I said, you know, the Girl Scouts have a really good program and they've embraced this, and I will make it my mission so that food allergies are just as widely covered in the BSA as they are in the Girl Scouts.
Awesome. Well, as someone who has a dairy allergy and an egg intolerance and a son with a gluten sensitivity, I really appreciate that kind of work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Stephanie, it's my perception that maybe these allergies have become more widespread, or perhaps it's just we know more about them now than say 20, 25 years ago. It seems that more of our youth today have issues with food. Is there any basis to that, or is that just my old man thinking?
No, I think that's true, and I think the testing has a lot to do with it. That testing has gotten better, and the celiac disease is actually more of an American disease because they don't have those problems over in Europe. I found that one of my friends who has a son with a celiac disease, she was talking to me and she said, hey, you know, I could easily go in vacation in Europe because food that they process, the kinds of processes they use over there are different than what we use over here.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the wheat in France, for instance, is completely different than the wheat in America. They still have sort of an ancient grain formulary for it, and we've got a GMO formulary for our grain over here, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's what she had said, and I actually relied on her a lot for when we were doing the rewrite of the Cooking Merit Badge.
Well, tell us a little bit about the rewrite of the Cooking Merit Badge, and I know that back in 2014 that the Cooking Merit Badge was elevated up to Eagle status, And then 2 years later, it had what I think is a complete rewrite. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so back when we were working with the Cooking Merit Badge, I I was just one of a group of people. Michael Callahan, who's also a local leader here in Cradle Liberty Council, he was my partner in crime locally. But then we connected with Nadine Shaw, who actually is working with the FDA right now. And at the time she came on board, she was with the USDA down in Washington. And then Nicole Smith, who is out in Colorado, she had a lot of the food allergy background because her son was also allergic to a lot of foods and different things. So the program was a challenge for them. And so during the time of the rewrite, we were looking at everything. We looked at all of the material available in the handbook as rank advancements, and then all of the material that was in the old non-EAGLE required Cooking Merit Badge. And the material that we were working with, I became a little bit frustrated, and I said to Janice Downey, our contact at National, and I said, you know, what frustrates me is that only those who are going for EAGLE will be getting the information that really everybody in the program needs to have in terms of food safety, safe food handling, how to actually care for those and prepare food for those who have food allergies and diseases and intolerances. And we batted things around, and we extracted certain skills and certain pieces of information and earmarked them and said, these items need to be in the handbook. And when the handbook was scheduled to be rewritten is when they extracted those items out of the merit badge and put them in the handbook. So everything that was near and dear to my heart actually transferred into the handbook so that everybody in the program is now working with the material. I think back at that time, I had asked Janice how many kids will be working with this, and she said, EAGLE required merit badges are earned anywhere between 38,000 and 82,000 a year.
Wow.
So I thought about it and I said, so we just went from, in 2014, between 38 and 82,000 kids having information to everybody having information. And I almost teared up because I said, this is everything that I worked on for almost 2 years. This is what we did. And I couldn't believe that it was so beautifully put together. And now every single person, every single youth member in the organization, plus their leaders, is going to have access to the information that I couldn't get or I couldn't find in 2007, 8, 9, when I was just starting out as a volunteer.
Awesome. Now, my son Zach and I, Zach's an Eagle Scout, and he and I are just putting together a new website, which is called easywilderness.com. And we've got a big section on recipes, and we have probably about 40 recipes out there. And we're trying to make it for Dutch ovens and slow cookers because they're so similar. And one of the things we do is we put an allergy alert right at the top. So if the scouts are looking through it, you know, they can tell what might be a potential problem for their patrol. Because we haven't found a whole lot of recipe books out there that are super simple. And really it's almost like a dump it in the pot, put a lid on it, and cook for an hour kind of scenario. Or if you're going to go out hiking during the day, you might put it on some coals, and if someone stays at camp, they can stir it occasionally, and 3 hours later when you come back, it's done. So that's the kind of thing. So have you experienced any of that, people having difficulty with recipes, or do you have a secret source of them that you can share?
Well, I always, whenever anybody asks, I always refer them to the Cooking Merit Badge because that gets them on the ground floor, and they can start out pretty easily with some really great recipes that is very much the My Plate model for nutrition. But what I do for the kids when they're working for the Cooking Merit Badge, we tend to go through all of the rank advancements first. But then when we get to the meal planning, one of my favorite activities is I tell them, okay, if I have a lot of scouts, I'll divvy up all of the different meals. Okay, you guys have breakfast, you guys have lunch, you guys have dinner, and then they're required to think about what their favorite meal for that particular meal is. And then, okay, well, you're at home, so what would you need? Write down all your ingredients and all of your materials, all of your equipment. And then I said, okay, now think about you're going to use that same food recipe, and how would you do that at camp? And they had to think about it. Okay, well, I'm not going to have my microwave, so how am I going to do it at camp or whatever? And then I tell them that's fantastic. And then I ask them to then take it over to the trail, and you're going hiking, and how are you going to do it there? And you could see the critical thinking, and sometimes they're like in panic mode. I'm like, there's no failure here. This is just to get your juices flowing. How are you going to do this? And maybe you need to think of something alternative. So that's where I would start, is with their favorite ones, and then kind of create your own recipes.
I think one of my favorite parts of the whole Cooking Merit Badge and patrol cooking was sending them out to do the shopping and having them have a certain dollar amount in their hands, and they starting to do price comparisons and things of that nature. We're not going to buy 50 pounds of hamburger. How much do we need, kind of scenario.
Yep. That's always a favorite. One of the things we did was we connected with ShopRite's dietitian, and they gave them a tour of their store and showed them what to look for, how to look for things on labels. And then they also hosted us in their meeting room, and we had a number of panelists so that the kids could ask questions about careers. So it was a really
That's
nice.
Awesome. You're giving me ideas here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so funny because one of my good friends, he's an Eagle Scout from California, and he actually works for the USDA here locally, but he just recently opened his own distillery. So we brought him in to talk about his journey through the sciences and why he's at USDA, and he's actually working on some GMO models right now. But then he took his knowledge and put it to an entrepreneurial fashion there.
Stephanie, going back to cooking becoming a required badge, were you involved in that process at all?
I didn't make the decision to make it an Eagle required badge. I just kind of found out. I remember the actual minute that I found out that it was becoming Eagle required. I was at the University of Scouting, and I was talking to Tom Harrington of all folks.
All right, so let's hear about Tom Harrington right after this.
Hi, I'm Coach Scott, and if you've been a loyal viewer of the Global Troop Resource for the past few years, you've probably guessed that we broadcast from a home-based studio. That said, we're preparing for a future where we'd like to take our show on the road. Our plan is to start by visiting other troops on the East Coast and broadcast in person from Scout camps and Scout reservations. If you'd like to be on our show or to see our plans, visit globaltroopresource.com. That's globaltroopresource.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, we're back. Stephanie, talk to me.
Okay, so back in the Tom Harrington Scout Executive days, I was at the University of Scouting, and we were a bunch of Scout leaders were talking, and one of them said, "Hey, by the way, did you hear that they are going to make the Cooking Merit Badge Eagle required?" And my antenna went up and I was like, really, where'd you hear that? And they said, Brian Wendell's Brian on Scouting blog. And I went, okay, all right. So I went and found it, and I just typed in a question. Is there any plan to include food allergy awareness in this rewrite? And he took that question and boosted it along to his folks at National. And it landed on Janice Downey's desk. And at the time, she was in charge of their innovation department. And she sent me an email and said, would you be willing to help rewrite this? And I was like, well, what do I know? So I did the best that I could do locally to find the people that I thought would be willing and able to handle the material, and not anybody, there was nobody around willing to do that. So I jumped on board. I took the information that they had already and went with it. So we spent, I reached out to Mike Callahan. He was actually a Cooking Merit Badge counselor, and I knew that. I knew he had Safe Serve certification, and he agreed to work with us and the team. And we met via sometimes team meetings, I think Citrix, WebEx, and phone conversations. And there were many nights I was up all night with Mike with his work schedule. We worked overnight and do some editing and really knock this thing out of the ballpark.
That's awesome.
Good story. Wonderful.
As I mentioned before, I grew up, actually I developed milk allergies at around 16, and nobody knew what they were. And I went to see a doctor, and he said, I just attended a conference in Baltimore, and they suggested that there might be such a thing as food allergies. And at the same period of time, FDA was fighting with corporations to beef up their labels on their products. And it was only those two things that allowed me to discover what my allergy was. And because I loved milk, ice cream, cheese, you name it, I loved it. And I ended up rotating my diet and figuring out, it took 6 months to rotate out milk and really discover what the problem was. So the fact that you've done this and brought awareness to that is just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, my son was diagnosed at 13 months, and he had 5 food allergies, and he outgrew 3 of them by the time he was 2. But the main ones that he had to carry an EpiPen for were milk and peanuts. And he was fortunately able to drop the milk at around 10, but peanuts he'll never probably outgrow. Yeah.
Right, I've never outgrown the milk, still have it. So what else would you like to tell us?
The kids are always hungry, and I feel like if you can get them thinking about not just the food that they're eating and the opportunities they have for food, whether it's at a meeting or at home or at camp, if they think about what they're eating, how they're going to prepare it, who's going to be eating with them, then they can, flip on a dime. If they learn the critical thinking skills with the cooking, it's not going to be a challenge for them when they're at camp and something major happens and they have to kind of pivot, and they're not going to get all worried and upset because they've already done that with pivoting during a food issue.
Right.
What if they're at camp and they burn everything? Then what? What do they have left? They have to figure that out.
Right. Now, you sent me a couple of pictures. I'm going to screen share here for just a second.
Okay.
And I was really impressed, and it seemed to me like you had been in a cooking show before. Right here, we've got a huge camera. I had to blur out people's faces because I didn't have likeness release forms from them. But and then we've got this wonderful overhead camera that you're seeing here, and chopping up on the show and things of that nature. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so one of the dreams that National had when this came out was the merit badge would be digital, and that you would be able to have filming short little clips explaining the different skills. So the blurred out people there, that's actually Mike Callahan, who's one of the co-writers, and my son. And there are, for everyone in there, there are releases, because that was a national project. They came up in November of 2014 and filmed us at Musser cooking for these little clips. And unfortunately, one of the women in the photos that I sent you, she passed away rather tragically short time after. So that project never really got off the ground.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We ought to resurrect that.
I agree. I actually, Steve, when Ann reached out to me and asked that if I would do something with Northern District, I sent down to Janice and I said, hey, where are those videos that we were working on? And she was like, that kind of got tabled. And
Well, if you want to resurrect it, we have a professional chef in our troop who actually teaches down at a school in Philadelphia, Greg Sloniker. And then, of course, we have Randy Hardy, who calls himself Chef Boy Hardy, just sort of funny. I'm going to screen share again for just a second here. Here we go to our recipes area. So here is the recipe page that I was talking about. And Randy, we put together a video on how to cook chicken cutlets. And we've got another one, which I call the one pot commercial, which is asking scouts from different troops to send in their recipes. And we got this list right now of about 40 different recipes that we've collected. And we're going to be posting more pretty much every week throughout the year to try and beef up those kinds of things. So if you want to resurrect it, if you have the contacts and the wherewithal and the desire, I'd be happy to work on that.
Now, Stephanie, they apparently did a rewrite of the Cooking Merit Badge 2 years after the new one came out. Why so quickly? What happened?
well, that was because the information that we had talked about regarding all of the food allergy awareness and the food safety, we identified certain skills and certain pieces of information that we realized everybody in the program should have, not just those working on the Cooking Merit Badge. And so we extracted those. We had identified those, so when they did the rewrite in 2016, 2017 of the handbook, then those skills and those pieces of information went into the handbook. So that's the only reason they basically shrunk it down. I think the merit badge folks are really particular at National. So I think the way they put it was for clarity. They called it clarity, but really what they were doing was they were moving pieces of information and putting it in the handbook so everybody in the program could have it from day one, right? And highlighting who you're, like my emphasis was find out who you're cooking for, find out who has what allergy if they have it at all, and be respectful of that. Definitely.
I know when we went to summer camp for a few years that I was sort of tapped as the food allergy counselor, and at lunchtime I'd be walking around all of our tables going, you're not supposed to be eating cheese, don't touch that food, and things of that nature.
And I found that kids are much better at taking care of each other than adults are at taking care of a bunch of kids. And I learned very quickly this was a program that reached for the can and not the can't. There's a lot of what can we do? And
that's a good perspective.
How can we have this meal the way you would like to have it so that this person can also eat it? And what can we substitute? And what can happen here? And one of the things I'll never forget, it was in the Tiger handbook. It was called What Kind of Milk? And it was an elective. And I jumped on that because, of course, my son had a food allergy. So one of the first little den meetings we had, I brought all the different milks I had. I had almond milk, soy milk, got all kinds of milk, rice milk. And then I brought an empty cow's milk container just so we didn't have any issues. And I let them try all the different kinds of milk. And we talked about where it came from and what it was. And then I shared about my son's food allergies. And I said, it's really important that when you're together, you look out for him so that he doesn't get the wrong foods that he shouldn't have. We had a situation where he was at the milk-free table and he had a lot of friends that were sitting there with him, and a parent volunteer was trying to pour some chocolate milk, and the kids were like, no. So it's often kids that are able to take care of one another if they're given the right, if the information is framed in the right way.
Right. That's really important because I always tried to make it a point at summer camp to not have the kids feel less than because of their allergies. And we would come in with coolers worth of food that they could eat. And if the meal was something like grilled cheese and they couldn't have it, we helped them get in touch with the kitchen crew, get them introduced, get them allowed to go back into the freezer area or the refrigerator area and get something that they can eat so they're not left there at the table with nothing.
I did that many a times. I was calling all over, depending on where the troops were going for camp and where my kids were going. They were very helpful when I called, and they were like, yep, we got him. What's his name? What week? Boom. And they knew. And
Awesome.
my son came back and was just like, yeah, I was fine. I didn't have a problem.
That's the way they do it. You do all the work behind the scenes and they go, it was fine.
Yep. And as we were doing the rewrite of the cooking merit badge, I remember taking calls from nationals, nursing, a nurse that was working on the camping committee. And they were doing a rewrite of all of the high adventure camps and making sure that they were able to get all of their food into some sort of a organized fashion so people knew what the ingredients were. And I always said, like, I don't want people to change an entire menu. I just want the labeling to be appropriate so that, because that's part of the cooking merit badge, it's part of, I guess, advocating for yourself. And that's
Right.
what the program helps teach, is the youth to be able to advocate for themselves. And I wanted them to be able to have the opportunity to read a label and make a decision without making a big deal about it. So
Right.
if they picked up a food item and said, oh yeah, okay, that's not for me, that's fine. My son, who has a peanut allergy, he went to Philmont, and he went without a parent. He was able to pair up with another boy in the crew that didn't mind giving up peanuts. So they went through their meal packs, swapped out everything, and they swapped with other people. And I sent like a whole case of like Nutri-Grain bars or something that he could eat. And they all came back because he didn't even need them.
Well, we're near the end of our half an hour. So, Steve, do you have any final questions for Stephanie?
No, Stephanie, I want to thank you very much for coming aboard. You really gave us some great insights. I mean, it's not every day that, National will change a merit badge, make it a required one, and then, a rewrite. And we're all proud that you were involved in the process. It's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. As you know, we post all of our videos out onto our YouTube channel, which is called the Global Troop Resource. And we have all of our archives there. You can also go to our website, which is www.globaltroopresource.com. And thank you, Stephanie. Again, it was absolutely great having you here tonight. Love talking about food, love eating food, all those kinds of good things. So we hope to be talking to you again soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
The Global Troop Resource, trying to put 1,000 skills into every troop's backpack.